Screen so far? Okay, perfect. So am I good to start then? Okay, well, perfect. Well, thank you very much for having me, everyone. These are the Shiva Sutras. Before we start, does anyone know a bit about the Shiva Sutras or about Lord Shiva at all? You can just kind of I'll look at the heads. No, not really. Okay, well, I'm glad I'm here then to inform everyone. This is the Shiva Sutras by, of course, Valen Shankar-Brown, aka me. Um, Let's see if this works. Perfect. So for today's presentation, what I really wanted to first talk about is what is the importance of it? We're talking about the Shiva Sutras, but what is the actual importance of religion and faith? So just kind of the preference the presentation. That's what I kind of wanted to talk about. This leads into the brief history of Hinduism. Shiva Sutras themselves are not a religion. It's just a incorporation, or it's just a subsection of a religion, really. And this leads into the inception of Shaivism, which basically is Hinduism, but just in promotion of Lord Shiva being the ultimate being in the universe. And so this leads into the actual Shiva Sutras themselves. We'll talk about the story of the Shiva Sutras, B, the interpreted meanings and discussion kind of around that, and then some Shiva Sutras that are handpicked by me that I thought were the most impactful in my life, and then that I just wanted to share to everyone else. So yeah, so to get into it, the first thing that we'll talk about is the importance of faith, of course. What does faith help us do? Well, religion and faith, it gives you a moral guidance. I'm not saying all religions, support all good, morally, righteous things, because there is some religions in the world which do not promote such things. But on the daily basis, I think most religions and a big reason why people, lean towards religion is because of that moral guidance. And so that kind of leads into our next thing, which is, a sense of belonging. Just like this UU church, the whole reason why everyone here is together is, that unity. There's power in unity. The biggest yearning for humans in all existence is, belonging. It's, companionship. People don't like to be alone. Isolation is a difficult thing to deal with. And so that kind of leads into, meaning and purpose. So, through this moral guidance and this sense of belonging with this great community, such as this UU, you kind of get a purpose and a meaning in life. And so that kind of leads into that emotional support as well. I think that comes hand in hand with the moral guidance and also the sense of belonging. If you have the right people by you, then you have the right support by you. And then, of course, cultural heritage. I think that's the biggest thing too. That's why I love UU so much as well, because a lot of my friends, they're very narrow focused and they're so in their own religion or culture that it's sometimes hard for them to expand outwards and listen to other perspectives. And every time I come and speak to a UU, that is not the case. Everyone is usually friendly, open-minded, and they're all here to learn. And so that's something I just wanted to congrats on you guys on that, because it's something you do not find a lot in the world. And I think if there was more people such as the UU in the world would be a greater place. So this also leads into the inspiration of art and literature. Through it all, what does this culminate into? If you look to the right there, these are some historical Hindu artworks from back in the day. So yeah, that kind of leads into also the promotion of peace and harmony. Again, that comes into like, what religion you are supporting, of course. And then this leads into personal growth and transformation. And this one right here is very imperative for the Shiva Sutras, because the Shiva Sutras really focus on your internal search of happiness. And so that really leads into community service as well, because, if you can't love yourself, you can't love anyone else. And so you got to make sure you're okay before you can help other people. And so that kind of leads into the history of Hinduism. Hinduism has a very rich and detailed background. What people do not know is our four original books, the Vedas. Is anyone familiar with the term the Vedas by a show of hands? Anyone? Okay. Well, yeah, we got some people. Well, what people do not really know is the Vedas are actually one of the oldest historical religious texts in the world. It actually predates the Bible, which people do not talk about. But yes, and so this leads into the first Vedic period, which is about 1500 BCE to 500 BCE. This is where the composition of the four Vedas really happens. And when I say the composition, I mean the writing, because unlike other cultures, such as Western, which is oftentimes written, we as Indians actually pass down our history orally at the start. It was all oral stories, it was all oral translations passed down, and that was sort of a key thing in our culture. And so that leads into the next period, which is the Upanishad and epic period. So at the start, we had these four Vedas, and they were kind of some of the Vedas talk about like black magic, but it's really just like rituals for the land, how to farm better and stuff like that, which they couldn't put a definition on in the, back in the day. And then this leads into the second period of Hinduism, which is when all the stories of the gods and it comes a little bit more with these two great epics called the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. And so some of the key concepts that emerged are dharma. I know everyone here has heard of karma. Karma is pretty well known. There's moksha and then also atman, which we'll talk about in later slides as well. And then this kind of leads into the medieval period. So the first two periods were really the first period of the Vedic period didn't really talk about the gods that much. It talked about some references to the gods, but they weren't clear cut and fleshed out. There was not full stories of them. The Upanishad and epic period is when the gods kind of start coming into play more. But the 5th century to the 18th century CE is when all the personifications and embodiments of concepts and nature elements really come into play with the gods as well. So yeah, and then this leads finally into the modern present. Hinduism still has a huge global reach in India, of course, and even in the States. So yeah, this, of course, leads into the inception of Shaivism. So we talked about Hinduism, but through that Hinduism, or through Hinduism, what derived from it is Shaivism, which is the support of Lord Shiva as the ultimate being. And so the prehistoric roots really traces back to the worship of Rudra, and Rudra is a minor storm deity. So he was associated with like storms and lightning, and how the storms would, come in and bring destruction, but then after the land would be great. The land would be very fertile. The land would be anew, so to speak. And so that sort of was the historical inception of Lord Shiva. So he started off as Rudra, and then in the Vedic period, Rudra gradually evolved into a multifaceted deity, which we now know as Lord Shiva or Lord Shankar, depending on what name you use for him. And so this leads into Shiva's prominence in 500 BCE to 200 CE. This is when a lot of Hindus are really diving into Lord Shiva, and they actually come up with Shaivism, which is the deviation of Hinduism just supporting Lord Shiva as the ultimate being. I also want you to keep in mind that while this was happening, there were other people or other Hindus who also believe like Lord Vishnu, which is the preserver, and then Lord Brahma, who is the creator, is the ultimate one as well. So there's all these different subsections of Hinduism happening as well. And so this leads into the medieval period. Shaivism is given a distinct momentum during this time, especially with the Shiva Agmas, which are another text which really provides philosophical, ritual, and theoretical or theological guidance for Shivites. That's what we call Hindus who believe in Lord Shiva as the ultimate being. And then 12th century CE to now, Shaivism is still a huge corporation or huge incorporation in Hinduism and also in India. And so, yeah, it continues to thrive with millions of devotees worldwide. I don't know if anyone has seen, but if you actually, if you're interested after, you could actually look in India. There is a bunch of huge statues of Lord Shiva actually continuing being built nowadays. I think there's one that is like 112 feet tall or something. I think my mom or grandma would know the exact numbers, but it is huge. It's absolutely huge. Like you walk in there and it's like, I think it's bigger than the Statue of Liberty by far. So yeah. And then this leads into the actual Shiva Sutras. And so through it all, we'll talk about the story first. So through it all, what really happened is, let me go to my story. So I'm gonna paint you the little picture. So in ancient Kashmir, there once lived a wise and enlightened man named Vasugupta during 1860 to 1925 AD. He was deeply devoted to Lord Shiva and possessed exceptional wisdom. He was a priest. And so, but despite the teachings of his other masters in Kashmir of Hinduism, he followed his own path. And so one night, Lord Shiva appeared in Vasugupta's dream, revealing the existence of a special rock near the Mahadeva mountain. And so, what did he do? Of course, he got up out of his bed and he went to the mountain. So, while going to the mountain, Shiva instructed Vasugupta to find this rock, which held these hidden teachings. In his mind, rock, what are you talking about? So he went down to the mountain and he found the rock. And when he did, he touched it and it miraculously turned over, and what it revealed was all the Sutras inscribed beneath. And so, filled with wonder and joy, Vasugupta studied these studies and shared them with his most deserving students, always remembering Lord Shiva's guidance to share with them only those who are ready for such wisdom. This tradition continues down to this day. So the rock is actually still there, supposedly. There's actually a mountain there, and there's a bunch of Shiva sects actually like built by this mountain because it has such a historical prominence. And so one of their rituals, or one of the things they do in their daily day, is go there and meditate. So that is that's the Shiva Sutra story. So, Lord Shiva came to this man in his dream, told him to find this rock. He found this rock, he turned it over, and there it was inscribed and etched all the Shiva Sutras. So this leads into some of the actual Shiva Sutras themselves. As you can see to the right here, this is one of the statues I was talking about that is super huge. You can see right there, I don't know if anyone can see my mouse, but all these people walking here, you can kind of see the size difference of how many humans it would actually take to stack up to fill it out. And so our first Shiva Sutra today is Chattanam, or Chattanam Atma, which also translates as consciousness is the self. So this is the exact first Shiva Sutra. And what this really prefaces what this really says to start off all the other Shiva Sutras is that your true nature isn't just your physical body, but rather it's your thoughts and your mind. But more so than that, it's how our true nature is connected to a consciousness that underlies with everything. So it is Shivites' belief that we are all connected to Lord Shiva, and that Lord Shiva is all us. So we are all connected in this whole existence and cosmos together. And so what it's really saying is that this physical form here is not your true self, but rather the feeling and connection between us, and also your mind. And so this leads into, I kind of fast forward a little bit because how it started was there were 77 original Shiva Sutras. However, throughout time, that 77 Shiva Sutras has expanded to, I think, 777 Shiva Sutras. So as you can tell, there's quite a bit of teaching and knowledge. The one thing I did want to kind of mention too is, unlike some religious texts where they have sort of like guidelines and strict rules, the Shiva Sutras are not really guidelines or a rule book by any chance, but there's more so just teachings for you to interpret and then utilize in your own life. And that was something that really drove me towards Lord Shiva and like diving into these Shiva Sutras, because what it really allowed me to do is just improve my discipline and my own control over my mind, which in my mind, is not a bad thing at any reason at all. So this leads into one of the other ones I chose, which is the self is the actor. And so what that really means is we all play roles, every single day, depending, I think people call it code meshing, or some people call it code switching. But we all play roles, but why, how, when, where? That's something to keep in kind of cognizant, because I'm currently a business major. My main focus is sales. And so, because I love conversations. And the one thing I kind of find myself doing is adapting to whatever audience or whatever person I am, in front of. But sometimes I adapt too well, meaning sometimes, I wish I said a certain thing, or I wish I spoke up when when I felt I should have, but I didn't. So these are just some things to kind of keep in mind, because, we are all acting, but, where and where. So when and where is what I meant. So this kind of leads to the next one, which is the inner self is the stage. So your inner self is setting, which one's thoughts, emotions, and perceptions play out. So if you kind of look at it this way, each person is unique and each person has their own perspective. And so therefore, each person is walking a different journey in life. And so how you frame your mindset and how you look at the world is how it kind of plays out in reality, if that makes sense. So yeah. And so this leads into the next one, which I thought was super interesting, because these ones are like sort of like dominoes in my head, how it just keeps going like this. Um, the senses are the spectators. And so, that kind of leads into your physical body as well. Um, you know, you are hearing these sounds and you're seeing these things, but is that truly you, or are you just spectating what's happening? And so it's kind of just making all these Shiva Sutras are just there to kind of help you think about, the reality of the world. And I think it's also really playing into just helping you accept your existence, because we just exist at the end of the day as well. And so it's just trying to find a purpose through it. And so this leads into one of my favorite ones, which is the pure state is achieved by the power of intellect. Now, the power of intellect doesn't mean like actual intelligence, like if you're dumber or smarter than someone else, but it just means, it's all from here. It's all from the mind. If you can control the mind, then you can control yourself. And so this leads into our final Shiva Sutra today, which I thought, as a creative, and I think there's a lot of other creatives in here as well, which really resonated with me, was the power to create is based on one's own experience. And when I read this, I was like, oh, wow, I never really thought about it that way. Because each person is unique and each person creates different things and each person has different skill sets and different assets. But why is that? Well, because we all have different experiences. We all look at things different. Miss, Miss Jane might create a different product than I might create. She might be better at this certain thing than me because we might have different experiences. And so that's something to kind of keep in mind as well, because it's a very cliche saying, but I hold it to this day. Don't judge a book by its cover. You don't know, what their experience is, what they're dealing with, what their journey is. And that journey and stuff is what makes you beautiful inside. That's the reason why you can create and whatnot. And so this kind of leads into our last slide, which I just want to say thank you and give a blessing to everyone. Om Namah Shiva, which means may Lord Shiva bless you. So yeah, that is the presentation.